I feel like we haven't done that in too long. Hi, Adam Bach. I hope you're here. But
I'm here. It says I can't start my video because you stopped it.
well, I'm thinking about it. With that being said, I'm gonna allow you to show your video, maybe, if it'll let you.
Okay.
And in the meantime, talk a little bit about what's going on. So we have news, which is that we do have a new stimulus bill in the works. Probably by the time everybody is watching this on recording, it'll be passed. 6,000 pages. They promised they'd release it between 10 and 11 a.m. They released it, 1:40. And so I've read the whole thing. I'm pretty much an expert on it. But let's do this, okay?
Absorbed it all.
I know everybody really wants to talk about sports. Cardinals won, Browns won, and I'm having foot problems. It really hurts. That's it. That's your sports update. All right, let's talk about what's going on. There's going to be some free money involved here, like there always is in these stimulus things. But let's let you, Adam, share the presentation. We'll go through it, and I'll give you some highlights as we go.
All right. So we've got a Christmas tree in front of the Capitol here. So this is the second COVID stimulus package, just in time for the holidays. So the first one, as we all know, was the CARES Act. That was $2 trillion, and that was approved in March. So this is number 2. Our second stimulus package, this was just passed yesterday, $900 billion rescue package. And the
agreed to in principle yesterday, being passed maybe today. So okay. We're on the 21st. So let's all calm down.
All right. I'm just like, the election. It's like I'm making the decision. Let's move on.
But this is happening.
All right. $900 billion for small businesses, help for unemployed Americans, healthcare workers, and vaccine distribution. So everybody's favorite, the stimulus checks. It used to be $1,200 the last round. Now it's $600 for an individual, $1,200 for a couple. But the caveat is an individual, if you make more than $75,000 a year, you probably won't get your $600. Or if a couple earns more than $150,000 a year, you won't get your money. But bonus, $600 for each dependent child up to age 16. So that's some additional money in the works. Unemployment benefits was $600 additional per week. They've reduced it to $300, but that's going to be extended for an 11-week period. So that goes December through mid-March.
You see the little news on this? I guess the Senate, Joe Manchin, a bunch of people in the Senate negotiated this, and then it popped through today at 11 weeks. They hadn't agreed to 11 weeks. They had agreed, I believe, to 14. But in any case, turns out a bunch of congressional staff are running the show. They didn't have enough money, so it's 11.
So it's 11.
Yep.
So there's also money funding for schools and childcare, $82 billion for K through 12 schools and money for colleges, and $10 billion for struggling childcare providers. Now our rental assistance, our famous CDC eviction moratorium, was running out on December 31st. So they're extending it, which I was surprised it was only a month, right? It's January.
Yeah, they're trying to put some pressure on the new Congress to do something. So this is supposed to be an interim step, but this moratorium is really focused on people who have loans that are backed up by the federal government, right? So this isn't every house. And here in Arizona, we don't have a moratorium anymore. However, there is kind of this national moratorium effectively through the CDC. So, things are getting a little bit complicated for residential landlords.
Yeah, there is $25 billion in rental assistance for individuals who lost their source of income. And presumably this money plus the, extra in unemployment is supposed to help people pay their rent. So
Yeah. How do you access that? Do we know yet?
I don't think we know, but it's set aside to help people with their rent.
Yeah.
So the CDC eviction moratorium, it doesn't, like you said, it's for federally backed loans, but it's also, you have to prove there's a substantial loss of household income, a layoff, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses. And you can't expect to earn more than 99,000 in 2020 to qualify, or 198 for married people filing a joint tax return. So it isn't for everyone, but if you fit in that category, then there's a form on the CDC's website that you attest to your eligibility, and then you get the protection. So that's through January.
Affirmative duty. So if you're a landlord and somebody has not presented that to you, you can move forward with an eviction. If you are a tenant, you might want to get that sent off to your landlord.
Right. There's also money for nutrition assistance, increases SNAP or food stamps benefits by 15% for 6 months. 400 million for food banks and food pantries, and 175 million for nutrition services for seniors, like Meals on Wheels. So this is, I think, in part because of the school lunch, issue, that kids that aren't going to school now, there's greater cost to parents who need some additional help paying for food for their kids. Then there's also money for vaccine funding. 20 billion for the purchase of vaccines, so they'll be available at no charge for those who need it. We don't want people to not get vaccinated because they can't afford it. And 8 billion for vaccine distribution. And then 20 billion to help states with increased testing for COVID. So that's all going to be part of it. Now, John, this is your favorite. Our last few slides have to deal with small business loans, Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, as we affectionately refer to it. Now there's additional 284 billion for forgivable PPP loans, 12 billion for minority-owned businesses, and simplified forgiveness for loans under 150,000. Do you have any additional?
I got a little thing or two. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how this affects the people who have a PPP round 1 loan, whether it's forgiven or not. Okay, there are a couple things that are very important. The first and most important thing for the people with existing loans is that anybody with $150,000 or smaller loan is going to have a 1-page form. They're going to sign it, and that is it. And your loan will be forgiven. There's also additional categories of things that you get forgiveness for. Stuff like, oh, I had to pay a supplier. I mean, it's really broad. So pretty much anybody who had a first round PPP loan is going to get all of it forgiven. Okay, this is great news. Next thing is even better news. So it was always the case that PPP loans were going to be tax-free, but the money you spent was going to count toward your income. It made no sense, right? So in other words, you were going to pay taxes on the PPP loan money that was received, okay? Just like it was regular income. That's changed. Congress made it 100% clear, whether it's an EIDL, whether it's a PPP, or any other money that came from the government, that is now 100% tax-free. That means you aren't going to include the expenses. That means that you don't need to include the income. That is a huge, huge benefit to business owners. That is a change with the new law. All right, let's talk about PPP 2, because I know that's why a lot of people are listening. As a reminder, for those of you that are here live, you can always raise your hand or enter a question into the Q&A, which is at the bottom. We'll be happy to respond. If you're watching this later on YouTube, just put it in the comments or email us. We're happy to help. All right, so here's the PPP 2. All right, we used to have 500 or less employees. Now it's 300 or less. So this is for people with 300 and less, 300 employees or less, with revenue that has fallen from a similar quarter in 2019 to 20 by 25% or more. So if you were shut down in quarter 2 or quarter 3, for example, then you are now eligible for another round of PPP funding. Adam was half right. There is not $250 billion more, or whatever he said. It's 147 billion. They had money left over. So they said, yeah, we'll keep using that. So the number is big enough that almost all of these companies are going to be able to get funding, we think. Okay. So basically, they're looking at 25% drop in revenue on a like quarter, any like quarter, and you're going to be eligible. And you will be eligible as long as you're not a publicly traded company for up to $2 million. So this is going to get rid of that kind of Shake Shack thing. For most people, that is 2.5 times. Remember, we have 2.5 months worth of payroll that is the amount you get. There's an exception for food service. Food service gets 3.5 times. So almost all of our restaurant clients, bar clients, people like that are going to be eligible for even more money than there were before. Something a little bit bonus here. If you are a live venue, in other words, you hold concerts or you're a small movie theater, something like that, get in touch with us. You're going to be eligible for a grant for up to 45% of your revenue for the whole year in the form of a federal grant. So there's a lot of stuff here really focused on hospitality. There's also a little bit of money in here, for example, for companies that wouldn't have otherwise been eligible, certain nonprofits that have to do with travel. So there's a lot of things in here that are helpful. But the main one is if you are a company that has shown 25% on any quarter of a drop in revenue, you are eligible. They have 10 days to figure this out, the SBA, which brings us to the beginning of next year. So at the beginning of next year, you're going to be eligible to apply. We suspect the best thing will be to do is to apply with your existing lender rather than start all over. But if you need to start all over, you need to start all over. There's no rule that says you have to work with your existing one. Sound pretty reasonably good?
I think you covered this one, right?
Yeah, this taxability issue is really, really helpful. And so if you had, for example, a $100,000 PPP loan and you're at the 30% tax bracket, this saves you $30,000. So it's really pretty helpful. So if we have any questions, now's a good time to ask them. We're going to kind of launch the poll if Adam could figure that out on his screen. But, a couple things to kind of note here, what they are looking at. What they're looking at is really a way to have the food and entertainment industry have some extra money to be able to keep people on payroll. Now, all these kind of rules apply where you have to have 60% of the money going toward payroll and things like that. But at the end of it all, this is really helpful also to people who earlier had done one of these PPP loans. One of the questions was, is this going to be on YouTube? The answer is yes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you missed out on the live version. It was great. One thing that is also kind of in the bill, which I haven't had a chance to really focus on, is an extension and more clarification for leave associated with people who have been affected by COVID. Employers have had this responsibility to pay all sorts of money to keep people employed, whether it's 2 weeks when they had it or longer than that as they've watched their kids and or other people in their house. And so that is also something that we'll look at highlighting a little bit more. One of the questions was, can a quarter be any consecutive 3-month period as opposed to a calendar quarter? And the answer is that it is a calendar quarter. So they're looking at like quarters. Now there's an exception to that if you're a new business. We set a really weird date, which was February 15th. February 15th, if you had your business, you're eligible for this stuff. By the way, there's a little bit of a different date for live venues. It's the end of February, which I just can't quite figure out in my brain why it is that you could have started an independent movie theater on February 20th, but if you started a business, you're not eligible for a PPP loan. But it is literally talking about the calendar quarters. If you were partially up and running in 2019, because you started the business sometime later than that, you could use any of your quarters. So like if you had the third quarter of 2019 is when you started, and because of the shutdown in the second quarter of 2020, there's a little bit of an exception. But for most businesses, it's the light quarter. And so for most people, they're going to be looking at April, May, and June, right? That second quarter. So look at the second quarter of 2019. One of the questions was from a friend of ours who is a bankruptcy attorney. And so I also want to point out that the revision here makes it explicit that Chapter 11 debtors in possession, are in fact eligible for PPP loans. It wasn't clear that they were before. There was a lot of back and forth. The regs differed from what Congress had passed. And so now they are in fact eligible. If you're a bankruptcy attorney, that's something to think about. If you're somebody on the verge of bankruptcy, ask your bankruptcy attorney. And so that's another big advantage of what we have going on here. So how do we do? I feel like we there's like a billion things in here, and we focused on the PPP loans. Let's really just focus on me for a minute, because in here, they said the banks don't have to pay those agent fees they promised us back in April. They said we could go back to our clients to get them. So if you're one of our clients, pay up, darn it. We didn't get paid. We're gonna let you off the hook for that. But remember, next time you have a real legal problem, call us, because we didn't get paid for any of those PPP loans, thanks to Congress turning around and throwing it right back on the borrowers, which is pretty evil if you ask me. I think there's gonna be a lot of people around the country who get a bill from their accountant and be like, what just happened? You are fine. Our fine clients are off the hook. There's a question about SBA loan payments being deferred. There is a deferment period. I'm going to have to kind of look it up. Have you seen anything about it?
No. So on any SBA loan?
Yeah, they had been, and there was a lot of talk that there would be additional ones. And the short answer is I don't know. There is some information in there, so just drop me an email or drop Adam an email, and we'll let you know once we get to that page whether or not it will be in there. All right, how do we do there, Adam?
Well, good. I don't know. When I read through this, and give me your opinion, but it seems like this is like just a stopgap until the new administration takes over. Do you get that feeling that this is not really the end goal, but it's sort of like just a band-aid to get from here to there? Or do you think this is really kind of the last bit of COVID stimulus aid that's going to come?
No, they got to do another round. Goldman Sachs basically said they needed 1.5 trillion, and this is 900 million. I think a little bit of what's happening here is kind of a wait and see what happens in the Georgia election about who has control. There is this pressure from state and local governments to get some aid. And there's also pressure from the business community to have some immunity from lawsuits that might occur as a result of not doing something that probably at the point of impact you didn't know. But I mean, frankly, there's a lot of employers too who are just irresponsible, right? And so as of now, there is no protection for them, and that litigation starting to bubble up. So the Republicans consider that a priority. The Democrats consider this other stuff a priority. So that's where we sit. All right, let's talk about the poll, because people really enjoy that. Question number 1, are you happy or just aggravated? 70% said they're happy, and 20% said I was perfectly happy before this question. So that's upsetting. Will you apply for PPP2 40% said yes, and 30% said maybe, which is code for like, I don't know what's going on yet. And have you received loan forgiveness? 30% of people have, and that's actually interesting. So in the bill, they basically say if you've gotten loan forgiveness, don't worry about it. You don't have to go back and redo it. But if you have not received entire loan forgiveness and something here would allow it to go through, you can go ahead and ask for that file to be reopened. They have a 17-day period, either 17 or 23 days, some weird period for the SBA to figure out how to reopen a file. So don't worry that your banker's gonna have no idea what you're talking about today. In mid-January, you're gonna be able to reopen your file and get the remainder of it forgiven if some new provision applies. So that's pretty nifty. Do you think the stimulus helps or creates too much inflationary pressure? What do you think about that? Do you have an opinion?
Whether this stimulus money helps?
Yeah, whether it helps or it's just like creating this major problem.
I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe we can patch it together and pull out of this without taking a deep dive, but I still have a feeling that we're just covering up a larger problem that eventually will get uncovered. So, but for now, I think it's good for people to not feel the immediate impact of it, but I do think we're gonna still feel some effects of it.
40% say it's necessary, I don't like it. 40% say Adam's right, and 20% say this is a total disaster. All right, will you take the vaccine when it's available to you? How are you feeling about this vaccine?
I'm not running to get it, but of course I can't get it right now.
Yeah,
But
if you could run, you can't go. This is telling, by the way. This is great because this is like a Facebook test for everybody. How many friends of yours are doctors? They are so flippin' proud of their vaccine. They're taking pictures, getting their vaccine, All my doctor friends. This just in an attempt to infuriate our clients, lawyers are on the list of essential. And so, although we're not frontline essential because we can't go to court and this is causing a major backup and problem, they're going to let us jump ahead of people and join the people who are 65 to 74. Oh, that's going to make people angry. Will you take the vaccine when it's available to you? 50% say yes, and 30% say maybe. I don't know. So, I think that's pretty reasonable. So, as one final question, when will the PPP one forgiveness applications be due? I don't believe that they've changed that date, but it is next. It's next year, I believe. Hold on one sec. Do you remember this offhand?
when it's due,
Yeah,
the loan forgiveness.
yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, they changed it 2 times. So let me back up. So it was originally due in June. Then it was due in August, and now it's due 10 months after the covered period. And the covered period was extended to 24 weeks. So for those of you who would like me to do the math, it is approximately 15 and a half months after you got the loan. Most of the people were somewhere in April or May. And what that means is that they aren't due until basically the middle of 2021. Hey, how do you even like that? Just so you know, Jackie made a comment that her lender isn't even accepting applications. The reason for that is basically twofold. First, before about a month ago, the SBA wasn't processing them. So it was just confusing. The second is because they were kind of waiting for this. And now we have some more guidance on what is going to be necessary as far as documentation and what is eligible for forgiveness. And so they didn't want to have to, a lot of lenders didn't want to have to go back. They wanted to wait for this kind of cleanup bill. And now you are going to have almost always complete forgiveness. And the good news is that we had a lot of people who are rushing because of tax reasons to do it this year. Don't worry anymore, no taxes on it. So even if it's next year or the year after or this year, it doesn't matter. And by the way, somewhere along the way, about 2 weeks ago, the IRS said it's this year for tax purposes. Well, guess what? IRS loses, United States Congress wins, and that's the way it's going to be. So that being said, remember, you can email us, jfrutkin@radixlaw.com or buck@radixlaw.com, and we're happy to answer your questions or concerns. Because the bill is still in raw form and they are going to pass it out of the House later and then the Senate and they'll get signed. None of this is in effect quite yet, but we're pretty darn sure now, having read the text of the bill, how this is going to turn out. All right. Thanks everybody for coming, and we will see you if there's an emergency necessity to talk to small business owners at any given time. How you like that? If there's an emergency, or my foot hurts. Or if my
It'll be breaking news.
yeah, if my foot hurts.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. That's it. All right. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate you
A pleasure.
doing what you need to do. I can't even play music anymore. It's really the saddest thing ever. All right. Theme music.
There we go.